My name is Josh Howe. Welcome to Faculty Office Hours. I am a professor in the History Department and the Environmental Studies program, and I'm here with my colleague, Aaron.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Ramirez. I am also faculty in the Environmental Studies program, as well as the Biology department.
The Environmental Studies program at Reed is it's more or less a science and policy program that investigates environmental issues from one of five different disciplines, or each of five different disciplines at Reed. It capitalizes on the rigor of those five disciplines and the college's requirement structure more broadly to try to provide a broad-based environmental education that empowers students to go on to careers either in academia or elsewhere in the broader world to affect environmental change, I guess. Most of my work has been on the political history of climate change. So I've got two books about the politics of climate change, focusing largely on kind of what we know, how we know it, and why we're so bad at dealing with it. And more recently, I've done a little bit more work on the environmental impacts of American foreign policy, and particularly a kind of crazy project with a former U.S. Marine on toxic exposures during the Iraq War.
So my research deals with trees and forests in the Western United States. And we look at how things like drought, wildfire, and climate change impact those ecosystems. Lots of different projects that students are involved with related to that. My research areas currently sort of revolve around three large collaborative projects that I have with colleagues around the Western US. Some of this work is based in Southern California, looking at drought and wildfire impacts on rare conifer species in the coast ranges of California. Other active research programs are more locally oriented here in the Pacific Northwest, where we're working with groups like the Nature Conservancy, who are doing a lot of restoration and conservation of forest ecosystems here in this region. And then the third area of research is a relatively new one for me, but being in Portland, it makes great sense because we have one of the most amazing urban forests anywhere in the world is here in Portland. We have really massive trees in our region generally, but also growing in our city that provide a lot of important ecosystem services to our communities locally. Our program is made up of different disciplines, so biology, chemistry, economics, history, and political science. So students that major in environmental studies, they are rooted in one of those, we call them flavors of ES. So the students will take coursework alongside other students in those disciplinary majors, but all ES majors will also take a core set of courses across the subdisciplines of the ES program. And so all of the students, even though they're rooted in different departments, they have a common core of coursework that they take in their progress at Reed. The other thing I think is an important component of our approach to environmental studies is that our work is translational, or that meaning that we engage with community members to solve real world problems with the research that we do and the coursework that we do with students. So there are a couple of courses that are specific to ES students, the ES 200 and ES 300 courses, and those are really opportunities for us to model both this interdisciplinary approach to solving environmental problems, but also this community engaged approach. And we team students up through the coursework with real world stakeholders that have a real problem that they bring to us, and the students work in a non-disciplinary way to solve that problem. As often as possible, the work has to happen outside. I think a lot of what brings us to the table as environmental studies professionals is our love of the outdoors and nature. And so we really try to create a lot of opportunity for our students to do their work in that setting that we all care about. So field-based work in biology and chemistry is a big part of it, and things that have real influence and application to environmental issues. The course load for Reed is pretty demanding, or for the environmental studies program is pretty demanding because you have those additional requirements across the disciplines of ES. It creates a pretty full course load and requirement for the program, but one that I think you really come to appreciate, especially later in your development in your junior and senior year, because it prepares you well for that interdisciplinary work that we want you to do as Reed thesis students.
There's a lot going on in environmental studies insofar as you've got, as Aaron said, your home department to deal with and all of these environmental studies classes to take and things to do. And what ends up happening is that because of the rigors of the major, our cohorts in environmental studies tend to get really tight. And you become part of this community of people who have chosen to do what is essentially a major plus environmental studies, right? It's not, you don't get to give up much to be an environmental studies major, but you do have to take on a little bit more. And that, I think, commitment and that passion creates really strong and interesting bonds among environmental studies majors. We also have a fair amount of programming that helps to facilitate that, not just for environmental studies students, but also across campus. So we have every year traditionally brought a couple of speakers, either from the world of public policy or environmental advocacy or conservation, to speak specifically to Reed's environmental studies program. And often they'll do a big event for the college as a whole, and then a small seminar for Reed students. In recent years, we've had Obama's essentially climate czar came out and spoke to us, which was great. We also have people from the Nature Conservancy regularly on campus. We have people from the Johnson Creek watershed talking to us on campus. We recruit environmental scientists from all over the Northwest to come give lunch seminars. So there's a pretty sort of healthy and rigorous program from both outside of academia and within the academic program, giving talks and engaging with students to try to kind of get students connected to the world outside of Reed. We also have a pretty good record of participation in actually hands-on restoration projects in natural areas. So this happens in the Johnson Creek watershed. It happens here on campus in the canyon. And then I think, Aaron, you may have run restoration projects elsewhere. I don't actually know about this. This happened when I wasn't here.
One of the classes I teach that is listed as an ES biology class, but it's also a class open to other biology majors, is called Leaves to Landscapes. And the class is sort of a hybrid between an older school kind of survey course that teaches you how to identify trees of the Pacific Northwest forest. And we do that by taking weekly field trips into the forest and learning how to identify trees and studying their ecology and natural history. That class transitions about halfway through to learning more about the research and management of forests in the Pacific Northwest. And we often do a project with a regional manager to address some issue that they have. Again, sort of this modeling this translational science approach through our coursework. If you're on the fence about whether ES is a good fit for you or not, one way to hedge your bets would be to take one of those intro science courses in your first year, regardless, biology or chemistry. It's going to slot in as a group requirement for you, regardless of what your major is. But if you end up being ES, you'll have that important requirement taken care of in your first year.
We've had environmental studies majors travel the world on Watson fellowships. We've had them work for the American Prairie Reserve and write for Montana Outlaw magazine. We've had them use their chemistry skills to test the quality of marijuana for the state of Oregon. We've had them help run the University of Pennsylvania Arboretum. The list, you don't hit a down point on the list. Our environmental studies majors are kind of disproportionately successful at finding interesting work right away. We have a fellowship called the Environmental Studies Summer Experience Fellowship. That's this endowed fund that lets us give money to students to go do cool stuff over the summer. Typically, they're either research opportunities or internship opportunities. It's a competitive grant process. And through that grant process, students have frequently made contact with and worked for organizations that either they work for after their time at Reed or put them in contact with people they end up working for.
My last comment, it'll just be that my colleagues in the biology department are super jealous that I get to be part of the environmental studies program. They often talk about it being the best committee assignment on campus. I couldn't agree more. I really enjoy working with the faculty. Josh and I co-teach the ES 300 class for the last few years, and I think our students really benefit from how close knit our program is, and it's one of the things I really appreciate about it.